Hey everyone, welcome back. I am going to continue doing some studying as I get set to go and play the PokerGO mix game series here in the spring of 2026. And for that today, I think I'm going to brush off my old school game that I used to play very, very often, which is Limit Hold'em, and just make sure that I'm feeling confident in my preflop play for 6-max Limit Hold'em, which is going to come up all the time in horse and 8 game. I notice in mixed game tournaments that people really shy away from the Limit Hold'em rounds, and I think a lot of mixed game players really don't enjoy the game. If you come from a Limit Hold'em background, you know you can have a big edge in a game like this, and so I think it's always worth brushing up on, and we can look at some common spots today, and I'll use the trainer on my lab to go through some situations, and then if we have any confusing hands, we'll dive into them. Um, I'm trying to decide what would be the best training mode for practice. I do think big blind defense is an area where people really struggle, and I also think facing action would be, and of course starting with RFIs, which is raise first in, meaning folds to you and you're deciding whether to open or not, is always a key topic. So let's do a few minutes of each of those, I suppose, and we'll see what comes up, right? So our first situation here is we're on the button with a very weak hand of Queen 6. This one is a no-brainer, and another no-brainer here for kings. So far, so easy. This one's going to be close, guys. This is a hand that in solver land is a little better than most live players tend to think. King 5 of diamonds in the hijack. I think it's right on the border, guys. I'm going to fold. Okay, so we can see I was right that it is right on the border. When you see a mixed frequency error, we can scroll down and look that it basically is a 0 EV combination. And we can go ahead and take a look here at all the King X hands here in the hijack position just to get a sense of where you draw the line. And we can see that King 5 suited was a raise and King 4 suited was a fold. You can also see King 10 off and King 6 suited falling into the raise. These are hands that a lot of players will fold in live limit hold'em play, especially in mixed game rounds where they're not comfortable with the game. But I know that that hand is quite close. Let's take a few more here. So far, so easy. Really getting some clean decisions here. Okay, Queen Jack. Again, a bit of a trouble hand, but definitely an easy open in the hijack here. I don't think this one's particularly close. Ace Queen, easy raise. Okay, so these are just too easy, guys. Oh, yeah, this is the last hand I'll do for raise first ins, and this one is an interesting hand. I believe this hand is going to be a fold. This is a funny hand combination that solvers have shown us are very, very weak in Limit Hold'em Ring. When you have a 2 in your hand, and you expect your opponents to play well, these hands do not perform particularly well. I believe this is going to be a close fold. Let's see. Okay, so if we look down here, yeah, we can see that you lose 0.11 big blinds raising deuces on the button first, and this is probably a big surprise to a lot of players that just think that that hand is a top tier hand. In no limit, obviously the set value of 2s is much higher, but in limit, you have a lot of tough decisions on later streets. All right, let's move to some big blind defense. What do you guys think? Let's see. Another very common situation. Okay, well, this one is kind of a crazy situation because we have 3 raises. So anyway, we're going to make an easy fold here. Okay, this one is a little bit more of a common situation. Still facing 3 bets, easy fold. The trainer has given me some very complex actions here so far in this little training session, but this one's a no-brainer, guys. Any 2 suited in the big blind is going to be a defense against the button. It's probably going to be a defense in my mind against any position here. So we can see that that one's not particularly close. If you fold versus call, you're losing a difference of about 0.29 big blinds. So, you know, pretty substantial amount of EV loss to fold 10-2 suited here in the big blind. Same thing with a hand like Jack 9 off. It's not a great hand, but just an easy defense. And Ace 9 is really, of course, an easy call. This is the only question here would be, would we consider starting to raise to 3-bet to punish this small blind cold call? I'm going to go with call, but I'm going to look this one up because I'm a little bit curious to see what Ace X hands I would want to 3-bet here in the big blind and punish that small blind cold call. And we can see that it looks like you draw the line around, you know, some suited aces, so mixing in some 3-bets with Ace 5 suited, Ace 7 suited, and Ace 10 off being another very borderline hand that could be a 3-bet or a call. So kind of good to know where I draw the line there in that sort of situation. I think these have been kind of easy. Let's take a couple more. Again, Queen 7 facing a raise and a call, pretty easy call. Ooh, it's interesting that this one was closer than I thought, guys. Look, notice that because we have that 3rd player in there, this Queen 7 combination is much weaker than it would be if we were facing no action. I think this might deserve a little bit more of exploration here. So let's look at some of these kind of hands like Queen or king high that have kind of like a high and low combo. So if we go down to the weaker holdings here, look at these kind of hands that want to fold three ways, right? We're facing a low jack raise and a small blind cold call. Notice, obviously, the very dominated ones make a lot of sense to fold here, right? We're folding hands like queen 5, king 5, queen 6. But what if we change the action just a little bit, and instead of having the small blind cold call, we have him fold, and now we look at the same range here of the queen X and king X hands, but now we don't have that cold caller in there. How do things change? Well, we can see now that some of those weaker dominated hands are getting in there. So interestingly, even though we're getting a better price in the big blind once that small blind is in there, these hands actually prefer to play heads up, because guess what, guys? These are really dominated by both the razor's range and the small blind cold calling range. When you have a hand like queen 5 off and you face a raise and a call, and then you flop a queen, it's kind of a dicey situation. When you're up against only one player and you flop a pair of queens, you're going to be much more comfortable with the hand. So it's a very interesting thing in solver land to realize that even though you're getting better pot odds, that doesn't necessarily mean you get to play more hands in certain situations, because certain hands do not perform particularly well multi-way. Okay, cool. I'm glad I looked into that a little bit. Not super interesting here. I think with a low jack raise and a button 3-bet, the king 10 off in the big blind is just a fold. But I do think that solvers are quite sticky in the big blind. I mean, we will be playing a lot of hands here. That one was not particularly close. Okay, this one is a hand that I think is definitely not going to get folded. We're facing a button raise and a small blind 3-bet. We've got sixes. I feel pretty confident that I'm just going to go ahead and 4-bet for value here. Sixes is not thrilled to be jamming here, but I think it plays better as a 4-bet than as a call. We can see that both of those options were basically completely fine. Raise or call would have been totally fine, and fold obviously would be a big disaster there, losing almost a whole big blind to fold a hand as strong as sixes in this wide range situation. This situation here is much more fraught with danger. Obviously we have ace-9, which is an okay hand, but facing a raise and a re-raise from earlier positions, I think this one's just going to be a clear fold. Easy defense of any two suited against a single player. Hey, we got aces. This one can go either way, and I'll just show a little feature of my site. So in solver land, you're going to do some mixing with your very best hands out of the big blind. The solver will play a 3-betting range here. So I've added a feature that's kind of an advanced power user feature to the lab, which is this RNG number here on the right side here. And I've rolled a 37 out of 100, guys. So this is kind of a low roll. So that makes me think that if the solver wants to call with aces more than 37% of the time, then because I rolled this number, I should call. And the trainer will give me feedback on a mixed frequency hand, whether I made the right decision using the RNG value or not. So let's go ahead and assume this is a low enough roll and call and see what happens. Okay, so we got a small mistake. It looks like maybe it's not mixing. So, okay, so I was wrong that aces would slow play here, and instead we're just seeing that it just loses 0.06 big blinds, 3-betting versus calling. In reality, it's not a huge deal to slow play aces in the big blind in this spot because obviously your opponent will see bet maybe a little bit too frequently on certain flops, and you'll make it back. But let's just take a look at what our 3-betting range does look like here in the big blind. And we'll see that it's pretty narrow. I mean, look, we're only 3-betting 4.2% of the time, guys. This is not huge. So, okay, so aces is pure 3-betting, but notice that a hand like kings or queens is doing a lot of mixing here. You can see all these mixed combinations here from other very good hands. So my instinct was right that it's a mixed hand, but aces is just not doing it. So that's kind of interesting, but obviously we saw that we didn't lose too much value in going for the slow play there. Okay, let's take a couple more hands here from the big blind defense, as these have been pretty interesting. This one's kind of a no-brainer fold, facing a raise and a 3-bet. And this one we have a raise and a call. Now, I said earlier that some of these dominated hands in the big blind are going to perform a little poorly multi-way, but this one being suited is just too good. And we're going to probably see here, if we go and take a look here at the range explorer for this situation, and we just look at suited hands, we'll see basically very close to no folding, right? We're folding, yeah, basically 0%. So, 7 deuce suited is the only one that's even considering folding. So, yeah, we're concerned about domination multi-way, but we're not so concerned that we're throwing away many hands in this spot, guys. That's just a small thing. But the offsuit big and little cards are the ones that are the most dominated. Okay, 10-9 facing a raise and a re-raise, easy fold. Queen 10 suited facing a raise and a 3-bet. I like 4-betting this hand. I think this is the sort of hand that has enough equity and also will end up sometimes bluffing on certain boards and kind of, trying to overplay a little bit. And we can see that looks like a clear best play. A little bit higher EV than call, but, not a big deal either way. Easy fold here. We'll look at a couple more. Same thing here. We're going to be playing a lot of 4-bets out of the big blind when we're facing 3 cold, and I'm thinking queens is strong enough to just go ahead and cold 4-bet here every time. And we can see that again, that this one's losing even more because now you're punishing that open raiser with his wide range, and you just want to get value for your best hands multi-way out of the big blind. And we can see that we're still going to have some fun hands that we can consider bluffing with in certain situations. Like obviously, you know, when we have a hand like Jack 10 suited or Queen 10 suited and we 4-bet out of the big blind, those hands are going to be bluffing at sometimes on different runouts, trying to target those ace king highs and things like that. Okay, let's look at one more hand here, and we have Queen 5 in the big blind. Now this is a little bit of a different situation because we're facing a single raise from a late position, and I think this is the sort of hand that would call against the button, but would fold against an earlier position raise. So I'm going to call, and let's see if that proves to be true. So we can see that it is winning a decent bit to call here. You know, folding would have lost 16 big blinds per 100. But let's just go ahead and move over to the Range Explorer real quick. And I'm curious to see if the raise came from an earlier position. So we have it here, I have the button raising, but let's just look at if it was the low jack raise instead. And in this situation, if we have the Queen 5, okay, so it's still calling, but look at the EV now, guys. Now it's basically 0 EV, so you could take a hand like Queen 4, or let's just look at all Queen X, and you can see that we found the borderline hand real quick here, and the Queen 4 now easily falls into the folding category. So, again, a reminder that these dominated hands do perform much more poorly against stronger, tighter ranges, but they're pretty easy defenses against a late position steal raise from something like the button, because obviously, when you flop a queen in that situation, you have way less to fear. Okay, I'm feeling pretty confident in my 6-max limit hold'em. This is a game I've played millions and millions of hands online back in the day, and obviously having the trainer here to quiz me kind of reminds me that, you know, I'm basically not making any major blunders in this session, so that's always a nice thing to see. Let me know what questions you have. I haven't focused too much on limit hold'em pre-flop ranges on my channel before. I've done a lot of solver analysis of individual hands, but today I decided to look at some 6-max limit hold'em pre-flop ranges, and let me know what questions you have and what you'd like to see next. See you guys on the channel. Thanks.